Right. Good morning, everyone. We are just about ready to get started. Welcome to this episode of Nature Webs. My name is Drew. I work at the Natural History Center, and I'm here today with my friend Kelly, who will be helping us out in the chat box and answering some questions, and in general, just helping us out if we need anything from her today. So thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to focus on seeds part 2, sprout your own. So those of us that were here last week, you might have seen my friend Bailey. She taught a webinar on how seeds move and how plants get their seeds from one place to another. If you didn't see it last week though, that's fine. You can start in today too. Because today we are going to talk a little bit about what seeds are and how they work and just how they actually form into a whole new plant. So to get started today, if you are new to Nature Webs, I'd like you all to take a look at your screen, and at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you should see a little box called chat. And if you haven't yet opened up that chat box, go ahead and open it up and maybe test out your chat box. Type into it. I would love to see where we are all tuning in from today. I'm right here in Missoula, Montana, and I see someone else is from Missoula. Very cool. Another local person representing. Oh, we have another Missoulian. Lovely. If you can't figure out the chat box, Kelly will happily help you. But during our presentation today, if you have any questions or comments or things you want to share, feel free to use that chat box anytime, and Kelly and I can get back to you. You're also welcome to use another button at the bottom of the screen. It says Q&A. And if you have any specific questions as we're talking together today, feel free to put a question in that Q&A box, and we'll make sure that we answer it at the end of the lesson. So we are just about ready to get started. And before we really jump into seeds today, I have a pop quiz. I'd like to ask you all, what is a seed? So go ahead, and you should be able to see this quiz on your screen. What is a seed? Is it the part of a plant that can grow a whole new plant? Is it the part of a plant that collects water from the soil? Or is it the part of a plant that collects light from the sun? Go ahead and answer that poll. I'll give you a few more seconds so that everyone gets a chance. Excellent. It looks like we're all in agreement. This is perfect. We're all on the same page. The seed is the part of a plant that can grow a whole new plant. It's not the part that collects water from the soil. Those are the roots. And it's not the part that collects light from the sun. Those are the leaves. So we know that a seed can grow a whole new plant. And to get started today, I thought we'll watch a quick video together, see if we can figure out exactly what is going on. So this is a pretty short video. It's only about 2 minutes or less. And as you're watching it, I'm going to ask you to type in the chat box if you notice anything, if something kind of stands out to you, you want to make an observation, or if you have any questions. Go ahead and type all that in the chat box as we watch this video. right. I've got some interesting observations in the chat box. A couple people have said that it's moving, and that's exactly right. This is a sped up video of a seed sprouting. And when we speed up the video like this, we can really see that the seed does move a lot. One person mentioned that the root kind of looks like a finger searching around in the dark. And that's a really cool observation. It does kind of look like a finger, just like pointing through the soil. Someone else mentioned that it starts out as one root and then it spreads into two and more. And that's exactly right too. It starts out as just one little root and then we see it branch out into more. I think this video is so cool and I'm glad that you guys made some great observations about it. I think it's cool because it almost seems like magic. When you see a seed like this, it starts out doing nothing and then within a few days, it's made a whole plant. And it might seem like magic at first, but there's actually a few really cool natural processes that are going on. And it just takes a few to make this happen. So we're going to start by exploring exactly what's going on in a seed. So how does a seed grow into a whole new plant? It's really not magic. What's going on is kind of shown in this little picture here. A seed is actually made up of three parts. Every tiny seed, even if it's very, very tiny, there's three parts in it. The first part that we'll talk about is the embryo. And the embryo is what we call the baby plant. It's like a tiny baby plant curled up inside, inside that seed, just waiting to grow. You can almost see in this picture, there's like little leaves, tiny baby leaves curled up inside that seed. Part number two is the seed coat. And the coat is something that just protects that embryo. So you can think of it like a raincoat or a jacket. If you're going outside when it's cold or rainy, you need a coat to protect you. And the seed needs a coat to protect it as well. Then we have the last part, the food store. And this has a very good name too. The food store is just what provides the energy for that embryo. So you can think of it like your refrigerator or your kitchen cupboard. When you need some energy, when you need some food, you go to your refrigerator and get some food for energy. That's what that food store does for the embryo. So all of these three parts work together to help the seed sprout or germinate. That might be what we call it when a seed sprouts. We might use that word germinate. And so all these three parts really work together. And we're going to go through those stages right now to see how these three parts all work together to make a plant. So step one. I bet you guys might already know the first step. There is one thing, one very important thing that seeds need to start germinating. Does anyone know what we need to add to a seed in order to get it to start sprouting? If you know, type it in the chat box. I'm seeing a couple of guesses. Excellent. Oh my gosh, if you said water, you are 100% right. All seeds need water to start sprouting. So what happens is when the seed encounters some water, when some water meets up with that seed, the seed starts to absorb the water. And remember, there's that hard protective seed coat. Well, the more water that this seed absorbs, the more that seed swells up, kind of like a sponge. And just like a sponge, it gets bigger and bigger, and it swells so much that pretty soon that protective seed coat just bursts open, and out from that hole in the seed coat, a tiny little root starts to grow down. The embryo uses that energy in its food store to help that root go straight down. Now we've started the process of germination. So what happens next? That root keeps growing deeper. And it grows deeper because it is holding the seed in the soil. It's kind of like anchoring the seed, keeping it strong, keeping it in place. And then, while that root is growing down, the embryo uses even more of its food store to grow a shoot. And the shoot is that part that comes straight up out of the ground, out of the soil. So we've got the root going down and the shoot going up. got another pop quiz for you guys. I think it is so cool that plants always know that their roots should go down. Roots never grow up, they never go to the side, they always grow down. Even if you take your plant pot and turn it upside down, the roots will turn and go down. How do roots know how to go down? Here's my pop quiz for you guys. How do roots know how to grow downward? Do they sense gravity? Do they sense the light? Or did roots go to college for a special degree? What do you think is the answer? Ooh, I'm seeing our results coming in. This is kind of a tricky one. No one thinks roots have a college degree, so that's a good start. Just take another couple seconds. All right, it looks like we're kind of split. Some of us think roots can sense gravity, and some of us think roots are sensitive to light. Now, it's true that roots are a little bit sensitive to light, but the main thing that makes them grow straight down is gravity. Roots can tell what direction gravity is coming from. When they sense that gravity, they grow down toward it, which I think is super cool. All right, let's see what happens next in step 3. Now the roots are continuing to grow. You can see, and just like we saw in the video too, they're splitting into more and more branches and getting little baby rootlets growing out of it. Meanwhile, the embryo has used up all its food store. The embryo has gone to the kitchen cupboard and eaten everything in it. And so what is that embryo going to do now that it has no energy left? It can't just go down to the grocery store like you or I would. Instead, the embryo needs to get energy from somewhere else. And to do that, the embryo starts growing real leaves. So the embryo, that little shoot, starts putting out more and more leaves. And those big green leaves help to capture energy from the sun. So there's nothing left in the food store. The embryo is going to use the sun to get more energy. And maybe some of you have heard of this before. If you know what that's called, go ahead and put that in the chat box. Does anyone know what it's called when a plant uses green leaves to capture energy from the sun? It's kind of a big word, and we're not going to talk too much about it today, but it's kind of cool to know. Excellent, yeah. It's called photosynthesis. So now this plant is doing a very special step, capturing energy from the sun and doing photosynthesis. And there's just one more step left. The roots are growing and growing. They're sucking up the water and the nutrients from the soil. And the baby plant is growing more and more leaves. It's exactly like solar panels. The way you might put solar panels on your roof to capture the energy from the sun, these plants use photosynthesis instead. And now it's not an embryo anymore. This is a baby plant. It's called a seedling. And when you see a small plant like this, it's got a root system growing, it's got some leaves capturing energy from the sun, that's called a seedling. Now, I noticed a couple of you mentioned in the chat box, it's not just water that plants need, it's also soil. And you guys are completely right. What about soil? We know that we usually see plants growing in soil. They're not just growing in midair. And soil is really important too. So soil provides nutrients and water for the roots to absorb. That's why roots are so important. They need to grab that water from the soil. And the type of soil that a plant is planted in really matters. If the soil is too rocky, all that water just kind of drains away. Like if you have a plant that's in sand or gravel, it's so rocky and hard, all that water just might drain away. But if the soil's not rocky enough, the opposite might happen and the plant gets too wet and it could drown. So soil needs to be just the right amount of rockiness and other materials so that the plant is always just a little bit damp, and that's going to help the seeds sprout the best. And I just see a great comment in the chat box, planting a seed on a wet paper towel. That's a great way that maybe some of us have tried that before, getting just enough water on a paper towel. So let's start to think about how we might plant a seed of our own. Now, maybe you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I have any seeds, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I bet that your house is filled with seeds. A lot of us have a lot of different types of seeds lying around our house, but we might not even realize it. So we're going to take a minute to think, and let's type our ideas into the chat box. Can you think of any types of seeds that might be lying around your house? And if you're having trouble thinking of any, we'll give you a little hint. Think about some things that might be in your kitchen. So we'll take a minute or two to brainstorm. What kinds of seeds might be in your house or in your kitchen? They might be things that look like seeds or maybe not really look like seeds. Ooh, I'm seeing the answers rolling in. Some folks are saying poppy seeds, absolutely. Avocado seeds, that big pit inside an avocado, absolutely a seed. Nuts and fruits are also a great example of seeds. And you're right, they can be edible. There's a lot of seeds that are edible. They're not just nutritious for the embryo, they're nutritious for us too, and we keep them in our kitchen. So check it out. Here is a whole list of things you might not have known were seeds. Beans are seeds. They're the seeds that a bean plant produces. We eat them because they're very nutritious, but they also can grow a whole new plant. Lentils and other peas are seeds. Sunflower seeds are a really tasty treat, also seeds. Popcorn, they're seeds from a corn plant. Almonds and other nuts like peanuts and walnuts, those are also seeds. Rice is a seed, and we might not think of rice as being a seed, but it's the seed of a rice plant. That's what people plant to grow more rice. You also might see seeds like that are inside of other foods, like seeds that are in fruit like apples or oranges, or some other edible foods like cucumbers and peppers and pumpkins. You might have things like that in your kitchen, and there's plenty of seeds in there. So here's how you can sprout your very own seeds from things that are just in your kitchen. I have a list up on the screen of things that you might need to sprout your own seed. And you don't have to worry about going to get these things now. I'll just do a quick example for you to see exactly how you might sprout a seed. And then once we're done here today, then you guys will have everything you need to sprout your own seed. So let me bring up my screen here. And I'll show you a bit about how you might take and sprout your own seed. So some of the materials you'll need are some kind of container to sprout, to put your dirt in. I've got this little pot. You can use lots of different things for your container. Another thing that's really easy to use, I happen to have this little pot left over from another plant I had, but you can also use something like this. This is just an old toilet paper tube. You might cut it in half like this. Got 2 little plant pots, perfect for starting seeds. So you've got your containers. You might also want something to put your plant pots on to protect the table or wherever you're going to put your seeds. Might get kind of wet and dirty, so I just have this lid from an old Tupperware. It's an old yogurt container. Anything you have lying around is perfect. Pie plate or a little dish from your cupboard. So you might put your containers right on your dish. And now's the time to add some soil. So I just grabbed some soil from my garden. Maybe you have a garden outside that you can grab a little bit of soil from. Maybe you have a bag of potting soil somewhere in your house. Maybe you can even sneak a little bit from a potted houseplant if you have a big enough houseplant. So I'll put some soil in my container. And then it's time to add your seeds. I sometimes like to poke a hole in my soil with a pencil, make a little spot for my seeds to go. And the seeds I brought today are some beans, just from my kitchen. I have some little black beans, just like this. And I like to plant more than one at a time. That way, if something goes wrong and one of them doesn't sprout, you might as well have a few different ones in there to see if one of them works. And I put them in the soil, poke them down in there a little bit. And then you might add a little bit more soil on top so your seeds are nicely covered up. There. Now, what is the one important ingredient we know seeds need to sprout? They need water. So once you're done planting your seeds, you might just add a little bit of water. And this is why it's nice to have this Tupperware container, because a little water might come out, and that way it's not going to be too messy. You can plant as many seeds as you want. You might not want to overcrowd your seeds too much. I usually just put 3 or 4 in each little pot so that they have enough space to grow. And then you're going to want to put your seeds in a sunny place so they get some nice warm sunlight. And you're going to want to keep watering them. So remember that we don't want our seeds to be too wet. We also don't want them to ever dry out completely. So you might want to check your seeds every day or so and make sure that it's still damp. And if it seems like it's about to dry out, you might want to add a little bit more water. That's all you need to sprout your own seed. So now it's your turn. Once we're done here, go ahead and see if you can find these materials in your house. See if you can find some seeds you might want to try planting. You can plant it in a container just like I did. Put it in a sunny spot. Keep that soil damp. And there's one last thing you might want to do. If you want to go to our website, the Montana Natural History website, you can print out a seed sprouting worksheet. And this is really nice because it helps you keep track of what your seed is doing. You can write the date, your observations, and there's even a ruler here at the bottom of the page so that once your seed sprouts, you can measure how tall it is every day. So I'll fill out the first part of my worksheet here. I'll write the date, it's May 12th. My observations, I'll write that I planted 3 beans. The height I'm going to leave blank because it hasn't sprouted yet. You can go online and print out your very own recording sheet too to keep track of your seed and how it grows. And if you're really excited about your seed project, you're always welcome to post a picture on Facebook or Instagram, and you can tag the Montana Natural History Center. We would love to see how your plants are doing. So everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of Nature Webs. Your comments and observations have been fantastic. If anyone has some extra questions, I would be very happy to answer them now.
I think we have a few, Drew. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Okay, so we had some good questions while you were teaching us. And one question that came up was, how would you describe a root, or what would be the definition of a root?
That's a great question. Roots, at first they might look a little bit like stems because they're kind of long and skinny and they grow straight the way stems do. But roots are the underground parts of a plant that collect nutrients and water from the soil. So if you're looking at a plant and you can't quite tell if it's a stem or a root, a good way to figure it out, if it's underground, it's probably a root, and if it's above ground, it's probably a stem.
Perfect. And then another question was, can you think of any kind of plant that might have special leaves that helps make or push that like rainwater downwards toward the soil? Does any plant have that adaptation where it has those special leaves that can kind of funnel the water to where it needs to go?
That's a good question. You know, there are some plants, I'm thinking especially of plants that live in really rainy places like rainforests or jungles. They have a special waxy coating on their leaves. Their leaves are kind of shiny and waxy. If you feel them, they're almost like, just feel kind of waxy, almost like soapy. And they help, you know, since it's so rainy in jungles and rainforests, those plant leaves don't want to absorb too much water. So that waxiness on the leaves helps the water just roll straight off the leaf and go down into the ground. That way the plant can soak it up with its roots if it wants to, but it means that the leaves don't get too soggy. So there are some leaves that will kind of do that. They'll kind of regulate how wet they can get and funnel that water back into the ground.
Pretty cool adaptation.
Yeah.
And then the last question was, if you were to soak your seeds in water first, or like a wet paper towel first, do you think they would germinate quicker?
Ooh, that's a good question. That might be a fun experiment to try. I've sprouted some bean and corn seeds doing that before. I've put them in a wet paper towel. And what I usually do is I keep a close eye on them. And as soon as they start to sprout, I carefully take them out of that wet paper towel and put them in soil. I don't know if they would sprout faster, but it might be kind of fun. Maybe you could set
Yeah,
up an experiment, put one in the paper towel, one in the soil, and see
that's
if one
great.
does better.
Yeah, cool. Well, I learned a lot. Thank you so much for walking us through this. I'm excited to see what people come up with.
Yes, I would be very excited if anyone wants to take some photos and put them online for us all to see. Thanks, Kelly, for co-hosting, and thanks everyone for visiting and spending some time with us this morning. Happy seed planting.
Thank you, guys.